family? CTR Media Network. Yeah. Best in the biz. Yeah. Join the team. CTR is who we are. The media network, that's the best by far. Whether you listen at your home, at your job, in your car, come get the information. What up, family? CTR.
What's up, everybody? I like to welcome you to another episode of the Men Can't Always Be Wrong podcast. I'm one of your hosts, T Swin. I'm a father of four. I'm a music artist. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm also a twin. And I'm a laid back and mellow kind of fellow. A-Sound in the building. Let's introduce and meet the rest of our guys in the crew on this Men Can't Always Be Wrong podcast.
All right, I'm Stevon Fluid. I'm an author, former police officer for the Houston Police Department, servant, and an activist. And I'm looking forward to this great show and interacting with all of y'all tonight.
Hi, my name is Jay Bean. I'm Mr. Average Joe, giving an honest opinion. I'm a former correctional officer, and I also have experience in the bail bond industry.
Hey everybody, it's LDC1. Father, musician, hard worker, been out here grinding, you know what I'm saying? 42 years old, out here getting, man. Just a hard-working black man. And also a person that got in trouble last time for my realism, because I keep it real, you know what I'm talking about? So it's going to be a wonderful show, and we're going to get to it. Shout out to all the men and all the women that's watching.
All right, y'all, man. We got a special guest, man, an early present for y'all for the holidays. And make sure y'all like, subscribe, share, comment, and post any input in the chat. Man, tonight we have a special guest for y'all. Y'all seen him on The Breakfast Club, Roland Martin. You seen him in Hidden Colors, Wilmington on Fire, Out of Darkness, Elementary Genocide. You seen him go viral on social media. He's a doctor of clinical psychology and a certified school psychologist, a community activist, an educator, a political scientist, an author, a speaker, and internationally known on the microphone, the self-proclaimed Prince of Pan-Afrikanism, Dr. Umar himself. Welcome to the show.
Peace and Pan-Afrikanism.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. For our audience that may not know you, why don't you introduce yourself and let them know who you are and what you're about?
Doctor of clinical psychology, as you said, certified school psychologist, certified school principal, author of Psychoacademic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys, also author of Black Parent Advocate, The Art of War for Dealing with America's Public and Charter Schools, former Minister of Education for Marcus Garvey's UNIA, blood relative to the great Frederick Douglass, blood relative to the 7th Bishop of the AME Church, Bishop Alexander Wayman, and I am currently in the final stages of renovating the first school in American history to be totally purchased, renovated, and operated with donations from African people from around the world, the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey RBG International Leadership Academy.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for coming on our show. Tonight, we're going to be having a discussion about men's mental health, you know, from young men to young boys to older men, how it's affecting our community. Lately, in the past couple of years, mental health has been a big subject in talks amongst groups. And I just want to know from you, how is mental health affecting our community?
Well, one of the things that we have to be very clear about when we talk about mental health in Black people is the impact of racism. And one of the reasons why someone like me, who's trained as a clinician, views the entire Eurocentric mental health establishment as a big hypocrisy is because nothing within mental health is designed to assess for the role of racism in the lives of African people. And even when we look at treatment modality, treatment planning, treatment paradigm, conceptualized treatment, whether it's depression or bipolar or borderline or suicide or low self-esteem, violence, we never assess for the role or the impact that racism plays in the mental illness of African people. So how can you cure African people when you refuse to implicate the central ingredient that is contributing to their mental health issues, and that is racism. About a year ago, in fact, I think it was this year. It was this year. The American Psychiatric Association and quite possibly the American Psychological Association, they both apologized to Black people for the role that they played in creating the inferiority complex, creating the disproportionality of special ed, the disproportionality in the misdiagnosing of Black adults and Black children, the role that they played in the over-medicalization of Black children, the role that they play and perpetuate in the Black-white test gap. But although they apologize for the role that they played in creating many of the big conceptual problems that Black people have that are related to mental health, they didn't offer a single solution for any of that. 3 points I would say quickly when we talk about mental health in African people. Number one, if you don't deal with the psychological residuals of slavery and their impact on African people, you don't change anything else about African people. There must be a psychological holocaust amongst African people before you can change anything else. There's no economic revolution. There's no cultural revolution. There's no spiritual revolution. There's no community revolution until you first revolutionize the African mind. As the most honorable Marcus Garvey said, don't take the kinks out your hair, take the kinks out of your mind. It is the mental side that is the biggest problem our people suffer. Frederick Douglass said it best when he said, it is better to raise strong children than to repair broken men. So number one, we must deal with the psychological residuals of slavery. Number two, how can you effectively heal African people when the crimes against African people have not stopped? In other words, if a woman is a sexual assault victim and you're trying to treatment plan for her sexual assault, you are in the process of establishing a therapeutic relationship to move her from trauma to a sense of peace. But every time she leaves your office, every time she leaves therapy, she goes back home where she's being raped and abused, goes back to the job, goes back to the community where she's being raped and abused. How can you cure trauma when the trauma has not yet ended? The point that I'm making, one of the biggest issues in the mental health of African people is the traumas, or excuse me, the experiences and circumstances that gave rise to our trauma have not stopped. We're still dealing with police brutality. We're still dealing with state-sponsored execution. We're still dealing with the inferiority complex, an entire society that is designed to perpetuate the marginalization of African people. So one of our biggest issues, how do you heal while you're still amongst the trauma? And the third one, European psychology does not admit the existence of spirit. European psychology does not admit the existence of spirit. This is a very big problem in the treatment of African people because we are spirit.
Spiritual
the
people.
word Africa itself, from the soul of God, we are spirit. Any conceptualization of African people's problems, any attempt to cure African people that does not take into account the central role that spirit serves will ultimately fail us. And that is a big limitation in European psychology as it relates to healing Black people.
Gotcha. Now, I'm going to touch on something real quick. Now, I had took a class on meditation, and I learned in meditation that we have stress markers, and we put stress markers in our DNA, and that those stress markers can be passed down through our DNA to our children. So do you believe that with those stress markers, our kids are already born with mental health issues that we have developed, that they're already born in it, or the systems that are in place is what's helping develop these mental health issues in our kids?
It's both. Science has already proven that your DNA not only contains the physical attributes of your ancestors, but it also contains the psychological attributes of your ancestors. We are our ancestors. They are living and traveling in our blood every second of our existence. They are us and we are them. From an African-centered perspective, every one of us is an ancestor returning to Earth to complete a mission that you had started in a previous life. So reincarnation is central to African cosmological thought, and all of us are reincarnated ancestors. And in that reincarnation, you not only have their attributes, but you also have their wounds, their pain, their guilt, their shame, their misgivings. Everything that the ancestors experienced is within us. And that's why Black people often react to phenomena in a manner that other cultures would consider an exaggeration. They would say, well, it wasn't that bad. Why did he flip out when he was called the N-word? It wasn't that bad. Why is the Black community up in shambles over that police shooting? It's because when you react to trauma, you're not only reacting to what's happening in the moment, you are reacting to what you experienced in past lives. You are reacting to the trauma of your ancestors simultaneously as you react to your own trauma in that moment. We carry them. And that is why healing ourselves is also healing for the ancestors. We cannot talk about healing for the ancestors if we don't heal ourselves, because we are their extension.
Gotcha. Now, I know we are very spiritual people, but with these situations that we have, does prescription drugs play a part in the solution of the mental illness that we're dealing with?
Not in my opinion. I am totally against the use of prescription drugs for children, except when necessary due to potential suicidality, potential homicidality, and in the case of psychosis, such as schizophrenia. And I would pretty much be of the same opinion with adults too. If they're not suicidal, homicidal, or psychotic, why are they taking medications? But I can tolerate an adult on psychiatric medications because an adult can communicate how those medications are making them feel. Adults are self-referred. In other words, if you're going through a depression and you want some medication, that's your decision. If you're dealing with a bout of bipolar and you want some medication, that's your decision. But children are not self-referred like adults are. Children are put on meds because the adults around them want them drugged up. See, that's a totally different process when you're talking about childhood psychiatrics. For example, when we look at most of the Black boys in America and across the African world for that matter, because I'm a Pan-Afrikanist, so I speak for all Black people.
Hey.
We look at all the African young men, boys around the world who are taking Ritalin, Adderall, Concerta, Cycler, Metadate, and all of these other ADHD medications. They're not taking these medications because they asked for them. You can't show me a single Black boy who went to his mother, father, teacher, principal, pediatrician, and said, I need some drugs because I don't know how to sit still. I need some drugs because I can't pay attention. No child ever self-refers for medication. They are referred by adults. And the reason the adults refer the children for medication is because the children are making their life uncomfortable. So children are medicated so the adults can be convenienced.
I went through that with my son. I went there with my son when I had one of my sons, and he was jumping around. He was very active, and one day he got to me, right? He just got to me, and I could tell he was just sitting still like a zombie. And then I had found out his mom was had him on the Ritalin thing, so I had to go against her to get him. You know, luckily I didn't have too much of a fight with her. She understood where I was coming from and took him off that. But you all right? Kids don't put themselves on that. And I told her the same thing. You're just doing that because you feel like you can't handle him or he's too much for you. But with me, you know what I'm saying? He's not that way with me. You know, I have discipline with him. You know, so I feel that is a cheap way out. I feel a lot of parents are just throwing their kids on these drugs and just trying to find a back door instead of dealing with the situation at hand. So I think that's a big problem.
Great point, my brother, which takes me to a point that I'm going to make sure everybody's crystal clear about. White America does not have a psychological treatment system for African people. They have a psychological exploitation system for African people. It is all about the money. I can't stress this enough. I had this conversation with my brother Charlemagne. I've had this conversation with other celebrities who promote mental health. Nothing wrong with promoting mental health, but please make sure our people have informed consent about the system that we're telling them to go into. Okay, right. It's all about the money. The diagnosis equals money. The prescription equals money. The services equals money. And so there is a tendency to exaggerate issues African people are having so you can get a greater reimbursement from the insurance company, a greater reimbursement from the state, a greater reimbursement from the school system. So if you take a Black boy to a behavioral health center, or girl or adult, if they get diagnosed with depression, that's money. That equals money. And then if you say they need medication, that equals money. And then you say they need therapy, that equals money. And then you say they need social skills training, that equals money. Intensive case management, that equals money. They need a approved private school for mental illness, that equals money. They need intensive case management, that equals money. Money, 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 money. And this is one of the reasons why I tell parents, do not get your children so quickly evaluated, because they're going to, if you go looking for a diagnosis, you will find it. Yeah. If you go looking for a diagnosis, you will find it. And our people need to understand that the reason there's a big push for mental health in the Black community, this is not being done for honest reasons. This is being done because the Black community is a what? Untapped market for the pharmaceutical industry. Let me say it one more time. Black people do not trust white institutions, nor should we. The mental health establishment is a white institution. The publicly traded Wall Street pharmaceutical drug companies see a big payday in Black America if they can convince us to go crazy on European mental health treatment modalities. So we have to be careful, because they want to diagnose you. They will find a problem just to get paid. They will create a problem just to write a prescription. Just last week, I saw an advertisement. The United States, I don't know if it's the Department of Education, National Institute of Mental Health, Food and Drug Administration, I forget which branch of the government. They want every child in America, Black or white. They want every child in America, I believe at the age of 7 or 8, screened for anxiety and depression. Why are you screening 7-year-olds for anxiety and depression? Every 7-year-old goes through bouts of worry. Every 7-year-old goes through bouts of sadness. But guess what? Go to one psychologist, it's a growing pain. Go to another psychologist, it's a family issue. Go to another psychologist, it's anxiety and depression. They don't care about 7-year-old kids in this country. The reason they want them screened for mental health is so the drug company can write prescriptions.
Yeah. Now I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran myself. There's another veteran on the panel, Hoverman Cobb, Stevon. I was dealing with some depression and anxiety. I developed anxiety by 34 years of age. And so they gave me a prescription for sertraline. And so I took it once or twice, and it made my head hurt. And so I looked into it, and I saw that it ramps up one thing and ramps down another one. I say, so this medicine is reprogramming my brain. That's why my head is. I said, I can't mess with this anymore. So I just left it alone. I started doing other things to better myself. Meditation. I started martial arts and stuff. That started being more active to put my focus in other places.
Absolutely. And those, go ahead. I'm sorry, brother.
I said, I've been better. I've been better ever since.
Powerful. To God be the glory. The other point I was going to make, gentlemen, is that these drugs, and anybody who doesn't believe me can go and do their research. You can start with the drug company websites themselves, because they often put some of the symptoms on the website, but they don't put all the symptoms because they're not required to put all the symptoms, because the Food and Drug Administration, which is in cahoots with the Wall Street publicly traded drug companies, they are paid by the drug companies to not only push the drugs, but to also consider safe drugs that are toxic. And believe it or not, most of the research that is done to say that a drug is healthy, the research itself is paid for by the drug company who created the drug. So let me get this right. I make a drug for so-called ADHD, which is nothing more than ain't no daddy at home disorder. I'll make a drug for so-called ADHD. I know I can make about $10 million off this drug the first year. And I'll probably be in the billions after 5 years, the way that they misdiagnose some black boys with this.
Yeah.
And the Food and Drug Administration, which is the drug and food police, right? They decide what's safe, not safe. I'm going to pay them off, first of all, because it is not illegal for members of the Food and Drug Administration. Check this out. It is not illegal for officials of the Food and Drug Administration to have stock interests in the same drugs they have to police. Did y'all hear what I just said?
Yeah.
The people responsible for telling you Ritalin is safe have stock options in Ritalin. And then the research to prove Ritalin is safe or not safe is paid for by the drug company that stands to make billions of dollars off of Ritalin. Yeah. Look at the corruption in the Food and Drug Administration. There's a group of white men right now suing one of the pharmaceutical companies because they took I forget which drug it was, one of the ADHD medications. And they started growing breasts. They started growing breasts because a lot of these drugs have high levels of estrogen, unhealthily high levels of estrogen in them, especially for developing black boys. And as a result, white men grew breasts. And now the white men have a class action lawsuit against one of the pharmaceutical industries because taking drugs to deal with hyperactivity led to breasts.
Yeah. I remember at one of your lectures, you spoke on that a couple of years ago. I think you also mentioned something about sterilization too.
Oh, yes. It causes sterilization, kills brain cells, stunts growth, tic disorders, schizophrenia, organ failure, premature ejaculation, can change the structure of the blood. When you look at the list of side effects, you would say to yourself, why would anybody give this to their child? And also, why would anybody take this themselves? Because you do know that the drug companies have immunity from the federal government. You can't sue them. It is almost impossible to sue a drug company, a pharmaceutical, for the problems that the pharmaceuticals cause. Because drug companies are one of the biggest lobbies on Capitol Hill. They have one of the biggest lobbies. See, here's what you got to understand about drugs. Dope, period. I don't care if it's illegal dope, legal dope, they all the same. And the people who sell them often control both sides of it as well. Drugs is the most lucrative business in the world. Why? Number one, very low output for very high gain. For example, if you own a restaurant and you cook food, you got to get a restaurant, you got to get a grill, you got to get the food, you got to get the chefs. You have overhead. If you're renovating an apartment building and you're going to turn that into rental properties, you have overhead. If you're a barber, you got to get your clippers and everything, you have overhead. You do hair, you have overhead. If you're a plumber, electrician, you got to get your supplies, get you a van, get you a truck, you have overhead. But once the drug is made, and as you know, every pill is a very small object. The pill is a very small object, and the chemicals that go into the creation of psychiatric medications are relatively inexpensive. The chemicals themselves are relatively inexpensive, and so you're mass producing something that weighs less than 1/10 of an ounce. But you're selling this thing that weighs less than 1/10 of an ounce for about $50 a pill, $30 a pill, $75 a pill. Look at the return on this. And one of the issues I have with some Black investment firms is I see a lot of Black investment firms starting to invest in psychiatric medication as a way to bring returns for their investors, which I totally am against and liken it to slavery, because you are investing in the psychological exploitation, devastation, and re-enslavement of Black children.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say some of that because, like you were saying, they getting paid off this, right? But I heard many people like on social media, like you look at a lot of socials like TikTok and everything, and people say, "Oh, I'm gonna keep this person like this so I can get this check, or I can get this check. I'm gonna keep this person sick. Or I'm gonna keep this person on Adderall so I can get this check, or I'm gonna keep this person crippled so I can get this check." So how do we defeat? It's like we facing a two-way mirrored monster. We got that. We got the corporations getting rich off of it, but then we got, you know, the back end people trying to get rich off of it too, trying to collect money off of it. You know, it's just like the government is kind of like the government gonna pay you to shut up. We're gonna pay you to shut up. Let's pay you to keep them sick. We give enough money to keep them sick, but let us do our thing. So it's like a two-way monster. How you defeat something like that? Like something so.
Well, the thing is, when you talk about healing in African people, we have to do that ourselves.
Yeah.
Because racism is still alive and well. The white man hasn't apologized, not sincerely, for anything he's ever done to Black people. They're not going to stop. So the healing has to be done while we're on the battlefield. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. Because if you suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, if you suffer from Gulf War syndrome, how do you treat that while you're still in the Gulf? How do you treat that when you're still at war? So Black people are not only traumatized, we are re-traumatized, you know, through our experience. I would even argue that a lot of what's considered ADHD in our boys, a lot of it is neighborhood traumatization by way of bullying, witnessing street violence, domestic violence, and other types of violence. When you look at the symptoms of ADHD, many of them are shared in common with a child who's dealing with post-traumatic stress. They're also similar to symptoms of a child who's dealing with attachment disorder. Father in jail, grandmom died, mother got her taken away. Those are all attachment-related issues. Now, here's the thing. When the little white boys, when their parents get a divorce, his behavior is treated as a consequence of attachment disorder. You understand? If he lost somebody to death recently, his aggression in the classroom will be treated as an adjustment disorder. That little white boy is not going to be ushered off to the psychologist, the psychiatrist, or the pediatrician for a diagnosis and prescription, because white people care about their children. They don't care about our children. And as a result of that, when Black boys exhibit symptoms of internal mental health issues, instead of showing some compassion, some care, some concern, when it comes to the Black boy, it's all about controlling the uncontrollable animal. They quickly rush him off to get a diagnosis of a disruptive behavior disorder, followed up with some medication. A lot of these boys taking these drugs, diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, disruptive behavior disorder, conduct disorder, ADHD, they don't have none of that at all. They're dealing with family problems, neighborhood problems, peer problems, sibling problems, and of course the everyday racism that traumatizes you as well from having to deal with racist, white, hostile women every day.
Do you think enough of us are waking up to where we can combat this and start moving in a better direction, or it's going to be a very, very long uphill battle?
It's going to be a very, very long uphill battle for a couple of reasons, good brother. I'll just give you three, though. One of them, white folks in white capitalism have convinced Black people that you can buy your way out of unhappiness. They've also convinced Black people that they can buy their way out of slavery. So you have Negroes across this country, 50 million. Many of them are out right now as we have this conversation, shopping for Christmas gifts because they think they can buy their way out of oppression, out of slavery, and out of misery. And that's credit to the white power structure for convincing Black people that if you just make enough money, if you just buy a good enough car, if you just move into a house that's in a white enough neighborhood, you will start to feel better about yourself. And what Negroes often end up finding out, and this is what I call buyer's remorse. Okay, Black people often suffer from buyer's remorse. You bought the Mercedes, and for the first 2 months, it did make you feel better, but you were not happy. That was just a feeling of euphoria. That was just the honeymoon period. And after 8 weeks, that Mercedes is now starting to bother you because you got to pay that insurance, you got to pay that gas, people trying to break in, you getting scratch marks, and you go through buyer's remorse. Most Black people, after Christmas, they go through a buyer's remorse where you regret having wasted all this money because at the end of the day, nothing outside of you can make you feel better. All mental health, all mental treatment, all mental transformation must take place within the inside. So number one, it's an uphill battle because Negroes are out trying to shop their way to freedom. That's number one. Number two, it's going to be an uphill battle because most Black people would much rather hide the mental health issues behind their materialism. So we do a good job of that too. I just got to look like I'm a healthy person. I don't actually have to be a healthy person. And credit again for this goes to the white power structure because they convinced everybody in America, not only Black people, that America is a civilization. We do not live in a civilization. There is nothing civilized about this country. You could probably argue there's nothing civilized about this world. You got people running into school shooting children. You got people walking into supermarkets murdering dozens of people. You have children committing suicide. Black girls right now, at least the last time I checked in the post-COVID era, our 14 to 17-year-old princesses lead this country in teenage suicide, in suicide period. The middle-aged white man was the one most likely to commit suicide for most of American history. Post-COVID, it became a teenage Black girl. So you got suicide, you got opioid crisis, you still got crack out here. You understand me? You got domestic violence, Black on Black crime, white on white crime, government sanctioned executions. There is nothing civilized about this country, but it's technologically sophisticated. And what the white man has done, he's convinced Black people in all of America that because you have a cell phone, because you can ride an airplane, because you have a tablet, because you have a video game system, because you have a car with heated seats and a radio in it, because you got Alexa in your house that you can talk to and turn off the lights and turn on the TV and turn up the heat, because you have technological sophistication, you are civilized. Technologically sophisticated societies are not civilized societies. Civilized societies are places where people are treated in a civil way. And people are not treated in a civil way in this country. You cannot have civilization alongside capitalism. Capitalism is the ownership of wealth by the few, which they accrue through the exploitation of the many. That means most people will be homeless. Most people will be hungry. Most people will barely be making ends meet. Most people will be destitute. 10% of Americans have more wealth than the other 90%. How can this qualify as a civilization? And that is a big piece of the mental health crisis that you're talking about, which is why I always say, until we start talking about giving Black men livable wage jobs so they can feed their families, until we start talking about giving Black men livable wage jobs so they can feed their families, we cannot talk seriously about solving mental health, because the best way to make a Black man feel better is to give him a job with benefits.
Oh, yeah.
For you, doctor, how do you think the suppression of our history affects the way we perceive ourselves?
The greatest Black psychologist of all time, a fellow Garveyite, Dr. Amos Wilson, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, that a person's estimation of their self-worth is largely contingent upon what they understand their people to have been and done in times before they were born. So without question, the lack of knowledge of self exerts an excruciating amount of influence on the way that our children think, feel, and behave. We have to give them restorative history. We have to give them corrective history. With that being said, I want to add this disclaimer. You can teach Black children who they are all day long until they are blue in the face. But if Black children do not see themselves receiving the same kinds of opportunities that yellow children receive, the same types of opportunities that brown children receive, The same types of opportunities that white children receive, if they do not see themselves receiving those same types of opportunities, ultimately everything you taught them about themselves will ultimately be irrelevant. When I speak at prisons, right? And the prisons are filled with knowledgeable brothers, filled with woke brothers, filled with conscious brothers. They done read entire libraries in that prison. But guess what? They're still behind bars. And guess what? When they get out, despite knowing everything there is to know about ancient African civilization, despite knowing everything there is to know about political science in Black America, despite knowing everything there is to know about the Black liberation struggles, despite being a master of African history, they will end up in jail within 1 year with all that knowledge if somebody doesn't give them a job when they get out. So knowledge of self is important, but without opportunities, we will still breed criminals.
Yeah.
So I read one of your quotes, and then I'm gonna just read. It said, "We don't have the luxury of being one-dimensional. Even though we are in a state of crisis, we don't act like." Do you still that's still relevant today?
Absolutely, it's even more relevant now because when we look at the conscious community, I see a lot of brothers and sisters who are one-dimensional, and they try to justify being one-dimensional. They say, well, I'm just putting the information out. I've decided to just put the information out. Well, what if Frederick Douglass sat behind a desk and said, well, I'm just going to produce the North Star. I'm just going to produce the Frederick Douglass paper. You know, what if Harriet Tubman or Ida B. Wells or Fannie Lou Hamer, Dr. King, Malcolm, Medgar, George, Jonathan, Huey, Fred, what if they all just said, we're not going to do no work? We just want to teach the people. My job is to teach the people. And the reason why you have all these intellectual masturbators on YouTube is because they're not committed enough and they're too lazy enough to get off of the internet and do some real work. You cannot be one-dimensional at all. I save children every day. I evaluate children. I'm building the school. I'm helping people with their personal problems. I'm contributing to the building of other institutions, different programs. I'm trying to do all I can in the short time that the Creator has given me on this in this lifetime to do. Yes, you have to specialize in certain things. I specialize in the mental health and education of African children. I'm specializing in the reconstructive education of our people. I'm specializing in the building of the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. But I can't just do one thing. When you are at war and somebody says we need some water, do you say I can't get no water because I'm just a sniper. Snipers don't get water. You do whatever you gotta do so your people can win the war. I could even draw a parallel to Deion Sanders, not to spend too much money on him, too much time on him. And I have tremendous respect for Deion, but that's the Deion Sanders Shannon Sharp argument. That's the Deion Sanders Shannon Sharp argument. You know, the problem of the HBCUs is not the problem of one man. The problem of the HBCUs was there before Deion. The problem of slavery was there before Frederick Douglass. The problem of slavery was there before Harriet Tubman. What if they would have said, oh, this is too big for me. I'm walking away. I can't do this by myself. When you love your people, you do whatever you need to do to transform their reality. Deion had a chance to transform the reality. The problem with people like Deion Sanders and Shannon Sharp is they have more commitment to their own personal agenda than the best interest of the Black community. And that's really what this comes down to. What do we value more? The attainment of our own personal agenda or the best interest in liberation and salvation of our people? For example, I can go right back to the white educational mental health establishment right now, and I would be a millionaire in 1 year. I lie to you not. I would be a millionaire if I recanted everything I said about special ed and ADHD and psychiatric meds and psychiatric racism. If I recanted with my popularity and my presence in the world, if I went back to the white power structures mental health system right now, I'd be a millionaire in a year. That's how much money they're paying for these evaluations. That's how much money they're paying for people to get these evaluations done. Just as much as I've influenced parents against special ed, I could go back and influence parents towards special ed, and I would be a millionaire. I'd probably be the director of the American Psychological Association in 5 years. But guess what? I love my people. My heart and soul has always been in the Black liberation struggle. Although I've always wanted to be a psychologist since a child, the priority for me is Black liberation, not my personal agenda. Deion chose $5 million a year over the long-term success and survival of the HBCU system. Again, Some people would say that's okay because they don't care about the best interests of the Black community. But for those of us who are truly about liberation, Shannon Sharp is wrong for not dating Black women, and Deion Sanders is wrong for going to the University of Colorado with a 1.6 Black student ratio.
Right.
Gotcha. Now with your FDMG Academy, that's how I said, what are you doing that that's going to change or break these cycles that we have in our community with our young, so they could change the future? Because the change is going to come with the next generation. So
Well, as I said earlier, until you have a psychological revolution, you change nothing else. The whole purpose of the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy is to serve as a psychological reconstruction clinic. We are there to transform the way that our young people think so they can be the leaders that the African race leads tomorrow. Frederick Douglass's quote is the main motto of our school. It is better to raise strong children than to repair broken men. What we're going to do, no other school has ever done, and that is reshape the way Black people think about themselves one generation at a time through our children.
I believe in what you said. I believe in so much you say when you say we neglect our pain and trauma. So I'm going to just ask you something I never been told as a Black man, as a Black father. How do you, I never been told, how do you start to pay attention to it? What do you start to pay? Like, how do you start to pay attention to it? Because I hear so much, neglected, or, be strong, or don't do this as a Black man. But how do you open up and really start to pay attention to it? I mean,
pay attention to, how do we start paying attention to what, good brother? I didn't hear that piece.
I'm sorry, how you said we neglect pain and trauma. We neglect our pain and trauma. But I never been taught how to, pay. I've been taught to neglect, but how to start, how do you pay attention to it?
Like, how do you address it?
Open up to pay attention to it. Because I don't get taught that at all.
I follow what you're saying. Yeah. And that's why when you study spirituality and you study some of the great spiritual teachers, they always taught what? In fact, there's a quote, and I think it comes from Buddha. It might have been Buddha, who was a Black man. It could have been Muhammad ibn Abdullah, the prophet of Islam. He was also a Black man. But one of them said that in the struggle between you and the world and you and yourself, you should second the world. Because until you've achieved victory over yourself, no other victory will be real. It is very difficult to engage in self-transformation. Why? Because you have an ego. We all have an ego. Yeah. And your ego's job is to constantly present an ideal picture of you to yourself. So in order to stare down your demons, in order to grow past the assumptions you make about your perfect self, you have to go beyond the ego. And this is why it's so hard for people to see their own faults, but they can see everyone else's, because the ego does not major in self-improvement. The ego majors in the stability of our self-image. And this is also a big reason why a lot of our relationships don't work out, because we have a certain image of ourselves, and then we get into a relationship with a significant other, and they start to highlight aspects of our personality that are less than perfect that they think we need to work on. And we don't want nobody telling us what's wrong with us. We want people to cheerlead us and worship us and honor us and serve us. Right. And a lot of relationships get ended prematurely because you have one partner who's trying to help you become the best you can be, but you're not interested in being the best you can be. You just want to be the best facade that you can be. And so to answer your question, my brother, in order to engage in self-growth, that takes a lot of willpower. That takes a lot of self-analysis. That takes a lot of hours in solitude alone, evaluating and studying yourself, and never, ever shrinking from an opportunity to point out a fault in the character you are. It's tough. It's like the person on drugs. The first thing they want to do is rationalize the drug use. The person who's overweight, they want to rationalize their overweightness. You understand me? The shopaholic wants to rationalize this shopaholicism. It's the way Black women rationalize blonde hair, right? You say, why you got that blonde hair on? Well, I just like the color. No, you don't. Because white women, that's their ideal hair color. White is blonde. And you want to be as close to them as possible because that's what you've been told is beautiful. It's the same reason why Black men date outside the race, right? But they will rationalize, well, I just fell in love with her. It had nothing to do with race. Yes, it did. It had everything to do with race. You low self-esteem, coon. Yes, it did. You understand? So you got to realize the ego isn't interested in transformation. The ego is interested in preservation of who you are. And that's why self-transformation is one of the hardest things you can do. Remember this. We all have a physical age, a physical biological age. That changes every year. You don't have to do anything in order to go up in age physically. You're going to be a year older no matter what. But guess what? Psychologically, you do not get older every year automatically. The only way you grow psychologically is to put yourself through the process of psychological growth. Every one of us has a physical age, and every one of us has a psychological age. You might be 40 physically. You might be 12 psychologically. You might be 60 physically. You might be 30 psychologically. For example, we've all seen a beautiful, attractive Black woman in her late 60s, early 70s. She's still fine, still got it going on, but a bit too old to be thinking she can still wear those mini skirts outside with the stilettos. You know why she's still doing that? She's trapped. Something happened to her early on in her life, and she is trapped in that 30-year-old body. And that's where 30-year-old mind, because she's in a 70-year-old body now, but she got that 30-year-old mind, and that's where she's going to stay until she decides to embark upon the painful road of self-transformation.
Gotcha. Now, the people that's watching, if you like the knowledge that's being dropped, make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment, and put your input in the chat. There was a question brought by Brainwave Relaxation. He asked, is it better to control the mind or the emotions? Or your feelings?
Well, the emotions are part of a mind. Those are not separate. The emotions are a part of the mind. So an aspect of the mind that you're needing to control is your emotions. But let me say this about the emotion. Emotions and memory go hand in hand. This is why people who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder can often relive their memories so vividly. They relive them so well that they think that they're re-experiencing the actual event, because the area of the brain that's responsible for emotion is also responsible for memory. So the more emotional an experience was for you, the more traumatic it will be. And this is why all great spiritual teachers in history and even religions now, they teach you control of emotion, especially when you're in traumatic situations. Because if you let yourself go emotionally, that is so much more that you're going to be traumatized by that situation, especially when those recurring memories come on up. But controlling your mind does not mean suppressing the content. A lot of people think controlling the mind is suppressing my emotions, suppressing my thoughts. No, no, no. You have to bring everything from the unconscious up to the conscious mind to be processed. It's like cleaning out your basement. Your basement is your unconscious mind. You got a lot of stuff in the basement. Some stuff you're going to keep. Some stuff you're going to throw out. Some stuff you're going to wash and repack. And so what we have to do to get healthy, bring it all up. Bring up the sexual molestation. Bring up the rape. Bring up your mother's abandonment. Bring up your father's emotional abuse. Bring up your big brother's sibling bullying. You know, bring up the peer shame you felt in school. Bring up all the girls who wouldn't talk to you when you was in high school. Bring up the pimples on your face that made you look so ugly you didn't go to the prom. Bring it all up, reprocess it, decide what's getting thrown out, decide what you're keeping, and decide what needs to be repackaged. And the simplest way to repackage a painful memory, it won't take the sting out automatically, but it will transform the interpretation from a powerless interpretation to a powerful or empowering interpretation. And that is to reassign a new meaning to that experience. Reassign a new meaning to that experience. I'll give you an example. I was going through something recent personally, right? And I said, wow, why am I going through this? You know, I felt like I had bad luck or something. And then I said, you know what? The reason you're going through this is so you don't make this mistake when you open up the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy. So what I had to do was step back and say, wait a minute. These sets of circumstances that I'm dealing with over here in my personal life, if I look at it from a different perspective, It's actually training me for how to handle those same types of circumstances when they come up at the school. So we have to make sure we're taking disempowering memories and reinterpreting them so they give us a new powerful view on things. Remember, there is no such thing as actual reality. The brain doesn't know the difference between a dream and you could get into a fight in your dream tonight. Your body will respond as if you fought somebody in real life. The brain can't tell the difference between make-believe and reality. This is why gangster rap is so toxic. This is why violent video games are so toxic. This is why violent movies are so programming to people. Because your brain don't know the difference, whether you went through it in a dream, went through it on TV, or went through it in real life. Your body, your mind, your memory will respond the same way. We have to use that law. We have to use the laws of psychology and the laws of spirituality to make sure we are building strong African consciousness and strong African subconsciousness.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Stevon.
All right. Yeah, I wanted to say something real quick. It's very important that I say this, that when we talk about our communities, if we don't understand how we can better communicate with each other, the issues that we have, don't think the police are going to do it for you. The police is going to be there to take you and your problem and will put you in jail. Now, the solution to that, to these issues that we're having, because it is an ongoing cycle, ongoing problem. What I'm seeing and what I have seen is that we're seeing the mothers are younger, the father's not present in the home, of course. So now the child is having problems, difficulties. The mama has problems, difficulties. The daddy has problems, the daddy ain't there. So you got all people with all different problems, and no one knows how to solve that problem because it's a cycle. So then now when you get the police involved, they're not going to have patience unless it's one of our own kind. We have a better understanding. But nonetheless, to come up with solutions and to solve that problem, police officers and law enforcement can handle the overwhelming problems with mental illness, mental problems within our communities and as a whole. So what must happen is that once a person who understands and has the passion like Dr. Umar and people like myself and the stuff that I have going on and what I wanted, the solutions that I have, you have to be able to find someone within law enforcement, within the health industry, pharmaceutical, whatever you want to do. But most importantly, it's going to be between the police who's going to come there for a problem. If the problem gets out of hand, that has to involve police. So what you do is that this is very important, is that you have to have someone in between, someone who knows the families in the communities, and then that information to the specific law enforcement who would then know that particular home or issues in that community, in that area, so that when the police does come and they don't know the issue, they're not going to have and waste any time. That's where the violence comes in. That's when the police brutality comes in. That's when, because now you're going back to the mental illness, you're dealing with the emotional person. And unfortunately, a lot of police officers are looking for that to get you hemmed up, to get the mother, to get the child hemmed up. So there's different alternatives now. There's solutions in place that can solve those problems. But how can you do that if you don't know how to deal with it when you constantly in that issue? It goes back to what Dr. Umar said again about the spiritual side. You have to know yourself, and then we have to always get back to the main source that we've always had as Black people. We had each other. Now, if a Black person in any hood right now has an issue, they don't have no one to go to. They don't have Dr. Umar, who's way over there in Philadelphia. They don't have it here, and Umar's not here in Houston, who they can go to. So what do you have? You have to have some resources not government resources, because they're restricted on what they can and cannot do. Because how do I know that? Because I've seen it happen time and time again. So the problem is now is that we got to be sure that once we recognize our problems, be able to have that ability to communicate that problem effectively to people who are concerned, that can get the proper help to and relay that to the police officers. And that's where I come in, and that's where my vision is and my purpose is. That's want to spread that kind of thing. But what Dr. Umar is saying. So the issue is definitely there, and it ain't going to stop unless we come into our senses, calm down, recognize where the problems come from. We already know. Dr. Umar has already stated that. We know all the issues we have. Now we just have to have the ability to make sure that we get the systems and the issues in place where it's like a 911. We call 911 for help, but this is another avenue towards 911, because 911 ain't even helping us now.
One thing I want to say in response to the brother and in support of what he said, first off, when a mother has to call the police on her son or daughter who's having a mental health crisis, the shame and the blame for that is on every Black man in our community. No Black woman should have to go outside of her community to get someone to counsel or calm down one of her children. You said something earlier, and basically it spoke to what I'm going to say now. The village is our solution. The problem with Black people in America, we do not operate as a village and have not operated as a village since desegregation.
Yep.
Mexicans operate as a village. Arabs operate as a village. Jews, Anglo-Saxons, Chinese, East Indians, Native Americans, everyone operates as a village. Black people operate as a nation of individuals. Nothing we do is done collectively. Part of understanding the ethos of mental health is understanding that just like a fetus needs the womb of the mother to grow and function, the individual needs the community to grow and to function. One of the biggest reasons why we have so much mental illness is we have no community. Where are our programs? Where are our systems? Where are our institutions? Where is our infrastructure? We don't have it. The Black psychologists, the Black social workers, the Black psychiatrists, the Black counselors, we should have a treatment modality already being implemented. I understand the Black psychologists have a treatment modality on paper, but it's not being implemented. And the reason these treatment modalities are not being implemented by our leading Black professional mental health associations is because everybody wants some money. Nobody wants to volunteer. The spirit of volunteerism that once controlled the Black community has been all but extinguished. We do not have the spirit of volunteerism no more. Nobody wants to do unless they are being paid for it. That's why our young boys don't have men in their lives. There's no reason why we got all these single Black mothers raising these Black boys on their own with all these Black men running around. If the father's not there, one of us is supposed to be stepping up to be accountable for that young man without expecting anything from his mother. The reason we got Black on Black crime, the reason we got gangster rap, the reason we got teenage pregnancy is Black men have no interest in fathering or being a father figure to children they did not biologically produce. Pathological selfishness is one of the greatest collective sins of Black America.
Gotcha. Now you said something about the people wanting to get paid. The people that are getting paid don't want their money cut off. They don't want their bank accounts frozen. They see the shambles that we in, and they know they could collectively help. If we get together, get on the same page, we could change ourselves. We don't really need nobody outside, but they're so afraid of being blackballed or being or their money being stopped that they don't want to help us.
Thomas Sankara, the great Pan-Afrikanist from Burkina Faso, who was assassinated in 1980,
Okay.
I want to say 87, maybe. I think it was 87. He said, the man that feeds you is the man that owns you.
Yeah.
And that's what's wrong with our athletes and entertainers. They have a lot of money. They have no freedom and power. Zero. They are scared as shit. I know. I've been around many of them. They're scared as hell. Millions and millions upon millions of dollars. They are scared to bat a fly. We are not going to get free waiting on them. They are too tied into the white power structure. They are too afraid. You're not getting liberation from them. So we have to get it from ourselves. But the problem with black folks, going back to white supremacy and the capitalist model again, they have convinced us that having money and being able to buy things is more important than freedom. And it's hard to value something you never experienced. That's another issue with black folks. See, this is why the first few generations of enslaved Africans fought harder than all the subsequent generations until the Civil War. Why? Because they knew what freedom was. Yeah. When you have something and someone takes it from you, you know exactly what you're missing. You understand me? If I'm drinking one of my ginger ales and you come take my ginger ale, we might got the slap box for that ginger ale because I know what that Schweppes ginger ale tastes like. But if you take a ginger ale from me and I never tasted that ginger ale, well, I don't really know what I'm missing. I can probably live without it. And black people are so far away from freedom that we no longer value it. And one of the reasons why we don't get respect from other people is everybody can see that we are okay being oppressed. We are okay being murdered. We are okay being miseducated. We are okay being gentrified and mass incarcerated as long as we can experience the conveniences and material privileges of American society. That's how low our integrity as a people has gone. We've gotten to the point where you can do whatever you want to do to black folks. As long as I got a cell phone, a Benz, a white girlfriend, a house in the suburb, I can get my hair done, some fresh Timbs and Jordans, I'm good. And a people like that, people who will content themselves with material garbage in exchange for freedom, they don't deserve to be free, and nobody else is going to fight for their right to be free. We are where we are because we choose to stay there.
Gotcha. Now, Tracy Holcomb asked, how can we restore the mindset so we can become one? What are some steps that we can start taking to change the mindset?
The only thing that's going to change anything is yourself or an institution that you need. Institutions control behavior, period. You go into the military, they tell you when to eat, how to eat, what to think, how to dress, when to dress. You go to school, they tell you what to do, how you're going to behave. You go to work, you're told what time to show up, what time to go to, what time you're going to leave, what time is lunch. They tell you what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. You belong to a community-based organization, a religion. Institutions control behavior. The reason we can't control the behavior of our own people in the black community, we have no institutions that they need through which we can exert an influence on the way that they act. What do we have that black people need? What does the black community provide for its own people? Absolutely nothing. How can you get people to cooperate with a community that does absolutely nothing for it? The problem we got is we're still expecting black people to be loyal to the black agenda just because they're black. Jews can do that because Jews provide resources for Jews. Yeah. Anglo-Saxons can do that. Anglo-Saxons provide resources for Anglo-Saxons. Native Americans and Latinos can do that because they provide resources for their community. The only thing we provide for our community is religion. There's no other resource black people have for black people. If you don't change that, you'll never get your children back. We could get all these drug dealers tomorrow. We could get the killers and the gangbangers off the street tomorrow. Hang up a sign that says $50,000 a year jobs with benefits, as well as a house purchase stipend, a house purchase scholarship. They lay them drugs down as fast as you can. You won't get everybody, but you'll get most of them. The reason our children don't pay no attention to us, we have nothing for them. Pay attention to you for what? You got a job for me? You got a home for my kids? You have nothing but a speech. And because of that, they don't listen to us. Economics and education. You go nowhere without economics and education. You need economics to train the youth. Excuse me, you need education to train the youth, and you need economics to provide an opportunity for the adults. When you can feed a person, they will be loyal to you.
Yeah.
And if you can't feed them, you'll never have their loyalty.
Now, Dr. Umar, we must bring our show to a close, but we appreciate you coming on our panel with us, man. We really appreciate it. Anytime in the past, I've reached out to you, man. You always been available. I found my Baba out here in Houston because of you, man. I started looking into EFI, and I found my Baba Obafemi Ifayimi here in Houston, MLK. But
let me give the people the donation information if I can.
Yes, sir. Tell the people how can they get to you, what you got going on, and what you got coming up.
Yes, sir. FDMG Academy, brothers and sisters, we are at the finish line, just about the finish line, 99% completed. The Marcus Garvey Elementary School of the FDMG campus, your school, my school, our school. Please continue to donate so we can get across the finish line. Get on your Cash App, $FDMG School. Get on your Cash App, $FDMG School. For my international Africans and PayPal users, FDMG Academy on PayPal, FDMG School on Cash App. You can also mail check or money order payable to FDMG Academy, P.O. Box 9634, Wilmington, Delaware 19809. All that information is also on my website, DrUmarJohnson.com. If you want to work or volunteer at the school, please send your resume to fdmgresumes@gmail. I repeat, fdmgresumes@gmail.com. You must include a photo and you must include a cover letter. Who are you and why do you want to work at this school? If you need to reach me directly for life coaching, consultations, you need help with your autistic kid, your ED kid, your ADHD kid, your emotionally disturbed kid, your intellectually disabled kid, your deaf kid, your blind kid, your speech kid, you got issues with mental health or education, you can text me directly to schedule consultation at 215-989-9858. That is 215-989-9858. Next Thursday, Kwanzaa Thursday, the 29th, I will be giving a free lecture in Washington, D.C., Chocolate City, at the Thurgood Marshall Center, where the most honorable Marcus Garvey once spoke and where Thurgood Marshall once used for his office. Please join us at the Thurgood Marshall Center Thursday the 29th of December. And then the next day, I'm at the Bronx Kwanzaa lecture on Friday, December the 30th at St. Helena's Church in the Bronx. St. Helena's lecture is $10 donation for the sisters putting that together, but the DC lecture is absolutely free. To my brothers and sisters on the mother continent of Ghana, I should be there on January the 3rd, bringing in the new year, speaking at the University of Ghana, East Legon campus. I also have St. Louis coming up. I have Pittsburgh coming up, Pleasantville, New Jersey coming up, St. Louis coming up, Baltimore coming up, and a few other places coming up. But anybody need that information, Dr. Umar Johnson at yahoo.com or 215-989-9858. And you can subscribe to my video on demand platform, drumar.tv, www.drumar.tv.
We appreciate you, Doc. For everybody, make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment. Men Can't Always Be Wrong podcast. I'm your guy, T Swin. I got some transportation music coming out, man. You can find my music at tswin.herenow.com. Good, clean, positive music for the drivers out there in the transportation field. B. Hudson is here.
What's up, DC1? Shout out, thank you, Dr. Umar, for coming on, man. I really
Appreciate
enjoyed the podcast. You said a lot of positive things, and I hope the community really take hold to what he's saying. There's a lot of truth to what he's saying. It's real. It hits you in the chest, but it's real, and it's the truth, man. So it's time for us to pay attention to this. And black man, let's do what we got to do, man. It's time to stand up, man. It's time to, our children do need us. He's not lying. They need us. You know, when we take us away from home, that's a big negative. So they need us. But shout out to all the brothers. Y'all can check me out. TikTok, everyone just put in the LDC music, same thing, got music coming out, and shout out to all the men and women out there, man.
Powerful.
Steve-O.
Yes, y'all can definitely reach out to me if you need any help, solutions, guidance, mentoring, counseling, security-wise, family-wise. Protect yourselves, protect your community, protect your neighborhoods, protect your life, because your life is important. And what we heard tonight, not only if your life is important, but the life that you leave after you is important. That is your truth. The children is the future, the generation. And if we don't have our children and we don't respect and love our children, we have no tomorrow. So it's important that we protect our children, that we love our children, and we protect our communities. And the best way to protect yourself is with CPIIA in position and in operation now, that you can get help anywhere at any given time, 24 hours, 7 days a week, anywhere in this nation. And this CPIIA citizens and police immediate interactive assistance. You can type and text CPIIA at 409-444-3524, and you will get the help and the consultation that you need, and you'll get the protection you need for you and your family.
Yes, sir.
And I'm Jay Bean. This your average Joe. I really don't have nothing for his time. I like to shout out CTR Media Network. That's who brought us all together. And once again, I'd like to thank the doctor.
Appreciate it, fellas. Great comments.
All right, sir. Man, hope to have you back, man, in the neighborhood.
Anytime.
Thank you so much, bro. And that's it for the Men Can't Always Be Wrong podcast. We'll catch you guys next week.
All right. Be blessed, fellas.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What up, family? CTR Media Network. Yeah. Best in the biz. Yeah. Join the team. CTR is who we are, the media network that's the best by far. Whether you listen at your home, at your job, in your car, come get the information that's needed above par. Never lasting, motivational podcasting, giving you the answers to the questions that you're asking. Serious talks and topics, how to come up and profit, how to better yourself. Your health is here, we got it. Reaching 350 million, they tuning in. We in 50 different countries, we all can. And like-minded, find your purpose and your assignment. Come get your fix, your feel, your mental alignment.
You are now listening to CTR Media Network.
What up, family? CTR Media Network. Yeah. Best in the biz. Yeah. Join the team. CTR is who we are, the media network that's the best by far. Whether you listen at your home, at your job, in your car.
This is Olivia Tucker. I should say Dr. Olivia Tucker, and she is leveling up the podcast on CTR Media Network.
That's me. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks to her, my podcast.
We got it. Reaching 350 million, they tuning in. We in 50 different countries, we all can. And like-minded, find your purpose and your assignment. Come get your fix, your feel, your mental alignment. Get active and speak to the masses. Build your influence all levels and all classes. Now you know you can monetize and grow. CTR Media Network, start the show. CTR Media Network. CTR Media Network. CTR Media Network. CTR Media Network. CTR is who we are, the media network that's the best by far, you know. CTR Media Network. CTR Media Network.
CTR Media Network is now accepting new podcasters to join our growing network that's reaching 350 million global listeners. Have you heard? CTR Media Network offers podcast production, podcast training, distribution, and product placement. Book us for your next event or schedule an interview with CTR Media Network podcasters today. To learn more, go to ctrmedianetwork.com.
We all got a purpose in this life. While we on this earth, find your dedicated lane. Don't listen to these haters and backstabbing neighbors. Fake friends and family with snakeskin layers. Take that vision that's up on your board and put it in your prayers. Get yourself up out the bleachers in the game and be a player. Take them people want you to chill. Don't sleep behind the wheel. The devil trying to make a deal. Don't sleep behind the wheel. Them people want you to chill. Don't sleep behind the wheel. The devil trying to make a deal. Don't sleep behind the wheel. If you really want to win, my friend, then keep trucking.